Hello students, welcome you all to the online class. In today's session, we will start with a new lesson in geography. It is lesson 1, India, location, relief and drainage. As we all know, our country India is popular for its rich culture and heritage. In this lesson, we will study about the relief features, location and drainage. So under the topic location, we will study about the location of India as per the world and in the globe, and also the area of India covered in the world. We will also study about the population and also the neighboring countries of India. And the next topic is relief. So what are the relief features? So under this topic relief features, we will study about the important mountains, hills, valleys, plateaus and plains in India. And the last one is the drainage system. The drainage system is also known as the river system. So in India, the river system is mainly classified into two categories. They are the Himalayan rivers and peninsular rivers. And now let us move on to the lesson and study about this topic in more detail. Introduction. India is the 7th largest country in the world. So based on area, India is said to be the 7th largest country in the world. As you can see in this picture here, the first largest country is Russia. And second largest country in the world is Canada. Third largest country in the world is United States of America. Fourth is China, fifth is Brazil, sixth is Australia, and seventh is India. And India is said to be the second largest country in Asia continent. Okay children, in Asia continent, India is said to be the second largest country, and the first largest country in the Asia continent is China. India accounts for about 2.4% of the total area of the world, with an area of 32,87,263 square kilometer. That is, in this whole world, the area occupied by India is about 2.4% of the land. Okay, so therefore India occupies about 32,87,263 square kilometer of the total land area in the world. And it is also said that some of the states in India are larger in size than the countries. India's land and water frontiers. Frontiers means borders. It may be either the land frontiers or water frontiers. So land frontiers means the border separating two countries, and the water frontiers means the marine boundaries around the country. Okay, first we will see the land frontiers. India shares its 15,200 kilometer long land frontier with Pakistan, Afghanistan, China, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh and Myanmar. Okay children, so these are the neighboring countries of India, and India shares its border with these countries. In the northwest, India shares its border with Pakistan and Afghanistan. So in the northwest you can see Pakistan and Afghanistan in the map, and India shares its border with Pakistan and Afghanistan in the northwest. And in the north, India shares its border with China, Nepal and Bhutan. And in the east, India shares its border with Bangladesh and Myanmar. Okay children, and next, India's longest and shortest border. India's longest border is with Bangladesh. So in this map you can see Bangladesh in the east, and it is the longest border. It is about 4156 kilometer, and India shares its shortest border with Afghanistan. In the northwest you can see Afghanistan, and India shares its shortest border with Afghanistan. It is about 106 kilometer. Okay children, so here frontiers means border. India is said to be a peninsula country. What is meant by peninsula? Peninsula is a landmass which is surrounded by water on three sides and land on one side. Okay, so peninsula is a landmass which is surrounded by water on three sides. The southern part of India is surrounded by water on three sides. So therefore India is said to be a peninsula country. In the southern part we have the Arabian Sea on the west, Indian Ocean in the south, and Bay of Bengal in the east. Okay, so therefore India is said to be a peninsula country. And now coming to the coastline. What is meant by coastline? So coastline is the area where the land meets the sea or ocean. In this picture you can see the coastline. That is the area where the land meets the sea or ocean. So this place is said to be the coastline. So already we know that our country is a peninsula country, so therefore it has a long coastline. Okay, so about 6100 kilometer long coastline of India is washed by three sides of water, that is the Arabian Sea in the west, Indian Ocean in the south, and Bay of Bengal in the east. And apart from that we have islands also, like Andaman and Nicobar Island, Lakshadweep Island, Maldives, like that. So including those islands, so the total length of the coastline of India is 7516.6 kilometer. And on the south of India we have the Sri Lanka. Okay, so India and Sri Lanka are separated by a narrow and shallow sea called Palk Strait. So what is meant by shallow? Shallow means it has a lesser depth. So the sea has a little depth. Okay, so India and Sri Lanka are separated by a narrow and shallow sea called Palk Strait. It is an important 1 mark question. Okay. India and the world. The Indian landmass has a central location. As we can see in this map here, India is located in the central part of the world, and it also has a coastline of about 6100 kilometer, isn't it? We have seen in the previous part. It has a coastline of about 6100 kilometer. So therefore this facilitates for trade and transport. The Trans-Indian Ocean routes, that is, the Trans-Indian Ocean routes means the routes from countries having coastline in Indian Ocean to other parts of the world like Europe and Australia. So through these coastline they can carry on trade and transport with other countries like Europe and Australia. Thus, this facilitates India to establish close trade contact with West Asia, Africa and Europe from the west coast, and with Southeast East Asia from the eastern coast. That is, through Arabian Sea it can carry on its trade with West Asia, Africa and Europe countries, and through the Bay of Bengal it can carry on its trade with Southeast Asia and other eastern countries. India, a subcontinent. So what is meant by a subcontinent? So subcontinent means it is a major subdivision of a continent. We know that India lies in the continent of Asia. So the major part of the Asian continent, so that is a part of the Asian continent, is said to be a subcontinent. Okay. India, along with the countries of Myanmar, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nepal, Bhutan, and Sri Lanka, is said to be a subcontinent, also known as the Indian subcontinent. This region possesses a distinct continental characteristics in physiography, climate, natural vegetation, minerals, human resources, etc. So therefore, India is known as a subcontinent. So can you understand, children? Subcontinent means it is a subdivision of a continent. So therefore, India with the countries like Myanmar, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nepal, Bhutan and Sri Lanka is said to be a subcontinent known as the Indian subcontinent. In the globe or in the map, you would have seen the vertical and horizontal lines. Okay, have you seen it? Yes, these are only the imaginary lines. These lines helps to find the location. The vertical lines which runs from north to south direction are said to be the longitudes, and the horizontal lines which runs from east to west direction are said to be the latitudes. Both the latitudes and longitudes are used to find the location. So according to these latitudes and longitudes, the location of India extends from 8 degree 4 minutes north to 37 degree 6 minutes north latitude and 68 degree 7 minutes east to 97 degree 25 minutes east longitude. Okay, children. And next, India is located in the northeastern hemisphere. So what is meant by this northeastern hemisphere? We know that the 0 degree latitude is equator, and this equator separates the globe, that is the earth, into two equal halves. The region above the equator is said to be the northern hemisphere, and the region below the equator is said to be the southern hemisphere. And likewise, the 0 degree longitude is prime meridian, and India is located on the east prime meridian, east of the prime meridian. So therefore, India is said to be located in the northeastern hemisphere. Okay, children. And the southernmost tip of the country is Pygmalion Point or Indra Point. So the southern tip of India is Pygmalion or Indra Point, and it is located in Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Okay. The north-south extent of India is 3214 km, which means they have calculated the distance, that is the length, from the northern tip to the southern tip of India. So the northern tip is Indrakol, which is in Jammu and Kashmir in the north, to Kanyakumari in the south. So the total extent from north to south is about 3214 km, and likewise they have calculated the total distance from the east to west. The east-west extension is about 2933 km. So this distance they have calculated from the place called Ran of Kutch, which is in Gujarat in the west, to Arunachal Pradesh in the east. And likewise, if you see in the globe, the Tropic of Cancer, that is the 23 degree 30 minutes north Tropic of Cancer, passes through India. You can see clearly in the globe. And this Tropic of Cancer divides India into two equal halves. The region above the Tropic of Cancer is said to be the northern temperate zone, and the region below the Tropic of Cancer is said to be the southern tropical lands. Indian Standard Time IST. The longitudinal difference between Gujarat in the west and Arunachal Pradesh in the east is about 30 degrees. So therefore, there will be a time difference of about 2 hours in these two states. In order to avoid this confusion and also to follow a standard time throughout India, we go for this local time of the central meridian of India, which is also called as the standard time of India. This standard time of India or the Indian standard time is calculated from the India central meridian, which is 82 degrees 30 minutes E longitude. This longitude passes through Mirzapur and roughly bisects the country in terms of longitude. The Indian standard time is 5.5 hours, that is 5 hours 30 minutes hours ahead of the Greenwich Mean Time. And now we are in the second part of the lesson. Major physiographic divisions of India. The geographical features of India has wonders, heritage sites and many places of natural beauty. We have the majestic Himalayan peaks in the north, the beautiful beaches in the south, the great Indian desert in the west and the breathtaking natural heritage in the east. That is, in the east we have Shimla, Nainital, which adds more scenic beauty to our country. Though our country has many landforms based on the major differences, it is divided into the following 5 physiographic divisions. They are the northern mountains, the northern plains, the peninsula plateau, the coastal plains and the islands. We will see about each of these physiographic divisions in detail. The northern mountains. The northern mountains are continuous range of mountains, and it is also the youngest and loftiest mountains. Loftiest means the elevation of these mountains are high. These northern mountains are said to be formed million years ago, and they are formed by the folding of the earth's crust due to the tectonic activity. That is, when two tectonic plates of the earth's crust, when they move towards each other, they fold over each other and they form mountains known as the fold mountains. Okay children, in this picture you can see at both the ends you have the tectonic plates. When they move towards each other, the earth's crust in between them, they fold, and this is how these northern mountains were formed. As you can see in this map here, the brown shaded region is the northern mountains, and it is clearly visible that the width of the northern mountains is comparatively large in the north when compared to the width of these mountains in the east. So therefore it is said that the width of the northern mountains varies from 500 km in Kashmir in north to 200 km in east, that is in Arunachal Pradesh. The northern mountains stretches for a distance of 2500 km. So the length of these northern mountains is about 2500 km from the Indus Gorge in the west to Brahmaputra Gorge in the east. Gorge means it is a narrow valley between the hills or mountains. Okay children, here in this picture you can see a gorge, that is the narrow valley between the two mountains. So therefore, the northern mountains extends from Indus Gorge in the west to Brahmaputra Gorge in the east. Okay. The adobe of snow. Palmer Knot is a plateau, that orange color shaded portion which is to the north of India is the Palmer Knot. It is a plateau and it acts as a connecting link between the Himalayas and the high range of mountains of the Central Asia. So these blue color lines are the mountain ranges, and one such mountain range is Himalayas, which extends into India. Okay, so this Palmer Knot acts as a connecting link between the Himalayas and the high range mountain ranges of the Central Asia. From Palmer, Himalayas extend eastward in the form of an arc shape. Can you see in this picture? Yes. So the Himalayas extends from Palmer Knot in the form of an arc shape. The term Himalaya is derived from the Sanskrit word. Okay. So it is a Sanskrit word which means the adobe of snow. And next we will see how these northern mountains functions as a great wall and how it is grouped into 3 divisions. The northern mountains, as we have seen already, which extends from Kashmir in the north to Arunachal Pradesh in the east, are categorized into 3 divisions. They are the Trans-Himalayas, Himalayas, and the Eastern Himalayas or the Purvanchal Hills. Okay children. Further, Himalayas is categorized into 3 divisions. They are the Greater Himalayas or the Himadri, the Lesser Himalayas, which is also called as the Himachal, and the Outer Himalayas, which is also called as the Shivaliks. So these are the divisions of the northern mountains. And now let us see about each division in detail. The Trans-Himalayas lies to the north of the Great Himalayan Range. So we have seen the subdivisions of Himalayas. So there are 3 subdivisions. They are the Greater Himalayas, the Lesser Himalayas, and the Outer Himalayas. So this Trans-Himalayas lies to the north of the Great Himalayan Range. It lies in Jammu and Kashmir and in Tibetan Plateau. Since most part of this Trans-Himalayas lies in Tibet, it is also called as the Tibetan Himalayas. And now next we will see the width of these Trans-Himalayas. At the eastern and western extremities, that is at the eastern and western end, the width of this Trans-Himalayas is about 40 km, and at the central part, the width of the Trans-Himalayas is 225 km. Okay children, and these Trans-Himalayas contains the Tethys sediment. What is meant by Tethys? Tethys is an ocean which was during the Mesozoic period. Mesozoic period means it was about million years ago. So million years ago there was a Tethys ocean, and the sediments found in this region are called as the Tethys sediments. These Tethys sediments are also known as the marine sediments. Okay children, and this Trans-Himalayas also has the metamorphosed sediments. The sediments which are formed from the metamorphic rocks are called as the metamorphosed sediments. Okay children, next this Trans-Himalayas has some important ranges. What is meant by ranges? Yes, ranges means the chain of mountains. Okay, the prominent important ranges of the Trans-Himalayas are Zanskar range, Ladakh range, Kailash range, and the Karakoram range. Okay children, so this Trans-Himalayas is also known as the Tibetan Himalayas, since most part of this Trans-Himalayas lies in Tibet. The Himalayas. The Himalayas occupies the core part, that is the central part of the northern mountains. The Himalayas are young fold mountains. Already we have studied about what is meant by the fold mountains and how it was formed. So the fold mountains are formed by the movement of the tectonic plates. When two tectonic plates collides, the earth's crust, which is in between these two tectonic plates, compresses and folds itself, and this is how the fold mountains are formed. So Himalayas are young fold mountains. So they are also young fold mountains. And now let us see how the Himalayas was formed. In this picture you can see two land masses which was in existence about 100 million years ago. Okay, so the two land masses which you can see in this picture are Laurasia in the north and Gondwana landmass in the south. In between these two land masses you can see the Tethys Sea. The Himalayas was formed by the movement of these two land masses. Okay children, when these two land masses move towards each other, the Tethys Sea, which is in between these two land masses, was uplifted by the compression, and the resultant was the formation of the Himalayas. So this is how the Himalayas was formed. Himalayas consist of many ranges. The main divisions of the Himalayas are the Greater Himalayas, the Lesser Himalayas, and the Outer Himalayas. The Greater Himalayas are also called as the Himadri, the Lesser Himalayas are also called as the Himachal, and the Outer Himalayas are also called as the Shivaliks. Okay children, and now let us move on to the do you know question. Okay. Aravalli range is the oldest fold mountain range in India. So it is an important 1-mark question. Which is the oldest fold mountain range in India? It is Aravalli range. The Greater Himalayas or the Himadri. The Greater Himalayas is located to the north of the Lesser Himalayas. As you can see in this map here, the Greater Himalayas are located to the north of the Lesser Himalayas. Since the mountains in this range are very tall, it acts as a wall to the Lesser Himalayas, and the width of these mountains are about 25 kilometer wide. So these mountains are about 25 kilometer wide, and the average height of these mountains in the Greater Himalayas is about 6000 meter. Next, these Greater Himalayas, that is the regions of this Greater Himalayas, receives lesser rainfall when compared to the Lesser Himalayas and the Shivaliks. Almost all the lofty peaks, so almost all the highest peaks are located in this range, that is in the Greater Himalayas. They are Mount Everest and Kanchenjunga. So Mount Everest is about 8,848 meter in height, and Kanchenjunga is about 8,586 meter. Okay, so these two peaks are located in this Greater Himalayas. Kanchenjunga is located between Nepal and Sikkim. Okay, and Mount Everest is located in Nepal. This range is the most continuous of all ranges. So these mountains is the most continuous of all ranges. So ranges means it is a chain of mountains, and these mountains are of continuous chain of mountains, and it is the region of permanent snow cover. So since it is located to the north of the Lesser Himalayas, and since it is very tall, it is a permanent range of snow cover, and it has many glaciers. What is meant by glaciers? Glaciers means a huge mass of ice and which moves down slowly over the land on melting. So some of the important glaciers are Gangotri, Yamunotri and Siachen glaciers. So all these glaciers are found in this greater Himalayas. The lesser Himalayas or the Himachal. The lesser Himalayas is the middle range of the Himalayas. So it is the middle range of the Himalayas and the height varies from 3700 to 4500 meter, and the width of these lesser Himalayas varies up to 80 kilometer. The major rocks of this range are mostly slate, limestone and quartz. This region is subjected to extensive erosion. What is meant by erosion? Erosion means it is the gradual destruction and removal of rock or soil by means of rivers, sea or the weather. Is it clear? So erosion means it is the gradual destruction or removal of rock or soil by means of rivers, sea or the weather. Okay. So this region, that is the lesser Himalayas, is subjected to extensive erosion due to heavy rainfall. Already we have studied that the lesser Himalayas and the Shivaliks receives more rainfall than the greater Himalayas. So therefore heavy rainfall, deforestation, that is cutting of trees, and urbanization, overpopulation leads to extensive erosion in this region. Some of the important mountain ranges found in the lesser Himalayas are Pir Panjal, Dauladhar range and Mahabharat range, and the major hill stations such as Shimla, Mussoorie, Nainital, Almora, Ranikhet and Darjeeling are located in the lesser Himalayas. Next we will see about the passes, that is the mountain pass. What is meant by mountain pass? Mountain pass is a path through the mountain range through which the navigation is possible. So, the mountain pass is a path through which the navigation is possible in the mountain range. And now look into this block. We will see some of the important passes in this lesser Himalayas. The major passes in the Himalaya are Karakoram Pass. It is located in Jammu and Kashmir. Next it is Zojila Pass, Shipkila Pass. It is located in Himachal Pradesh. And next is Bomdila Pass. It is located in Arunachal Pradesh. And Nathula Pass and Jilepla Pass is located in Sikkim. The Khyber Pass connects Pakistan and Afghanistan. Bolan Pass in Pakistan are the important passes of the Indian subcontinent, and they are located in the lesser Himalayas and the northern mountains. The outer Himalayas or the Shivaliks. The Shivaliks extend from Jammu and Kashmir to Assam. As you can see in the map here, the Shivaliks is below the greater Himalayas and it extends from Jammu and Kashmir to Assam. It is partly made by the debris brought by the Himalayan rivers. So here debris means it is a natural material. Mainly it is broken pieces of rock. Okay. So it is mainly the broken pieces of rock which is brought by the Himalayan rivers. And the altitude of these Shivaliks vary from 900 to 1100 meters, and the average elevation, that is the average altitude of this range, is 100 meter. So here elevation means the height above the sea level. Okay. The width of the Shivaliks varies from 10 km in the east to 50 km in the west. So in the east, the width of these Shivaliks is about only 10 km, and to the west it is about 50 km. These outer Himalayas, that is the Shivaliks, is mostly of discontinuous ranges. So they are not continuous chain of mountains, but they are discontinuous. The longitudinal valleys found between the Shivaliks and the lesser Himalayas are called as the duns. So we have already seen what is meant by valley. So valley is a lower area of land between two mountains or hills. Okay, children. So this longitudinal valley found between the Shivaliks and the lesser Himalayas are called duns in the west. So in the west side it is called as the duns, and in the east side it is called as the dewars. And apart from this, nowadays people started to occupy and settle in these places, that is in the Shivaliks. Purvanchal Hills. You can see in this map, on the eastern part you have the Purvanchal, and these are the eastern offshoot. That is they are the eastern extension of the Himalayas. It extended in the northeastern states of India. So these Purvanchal are found in the northeastern states of India. Most of these hills are located along the border of India and Myanmar, while others are inside India. So most part of the Purvanchal hills are found in the border of India and Myanmar, and some parts are found within India. The hills like Dafla Hills, Abur Hills, Mishmi Hills, Patkai Bum Hills, Naga Hills, Manipur Hills, Mizo Hills, Tripura Hills, Mikir Hills, Garo Hills, Kashi Hills, and Jaintia Hills are the hills which are collectively known as the Purvanchal Hills. That is, all these hills are collectively known as the Purvanchal Hills. Importance of Himalayas. Himalayas block southwest monsoon winds and causes heavy rainfall to North India. Already we have studied about the southwest monsoon winds in the physical geography of Tamil Nadu lesson. The southwest monsoon winds, after giving heavy rainfall in Kerala, it moves towards north. In the north, it is blocked by these Himalayas, and therefore it gives a heavy rainfall to North India. Okay, children. So Himalayas blocks the southwest monsoon winds and causes heavy rainfall to North India. And second point, it forms a natural barrier to the subcontinent. As the greater Himalayas are continuous range of mountains, and as they are very tall, it acts as a natural barrier to the Indian subcontinent. And third point, it is the source of many perennial rivers. What is meant by perennial rivers? Perennial rivers means it has a water flow throughout the year. And how is this possible? Any guesses? Yes. Due to the presence of glaciers in the greater Himalayas, there are many perennial rivers in North India like Indus, Ganges, Brahmaputra, etc. So, Himalayas is the source of many perennial rivers like Indus, Ganges and Brahmaputra due to the presence of glaciers in the greater Himalayas. So, some of the glaciers are Gangotri, Yamunotri, Siachen Glacier, etc. Fourth point, the northern mountains are described as the paradise of tourists due to its natural beauty. So, in this northern mountains, you can see many tourist spots and hill stations. And next point, many hill stations and pilgrim centers. So, apart from tourist spot, there are also pilgrim centers like that is the places of worship. Okay. So there are also many pilgrim centers like Amarnath, Kedarnath, Badrinath, Vaishnavi Devi temples, etc. So all these famous pilgrim centers are located in Himalayas. Himalayas provide raw material for many forest-based industries. Can you tell me some examples for forest-based industries? Yes, like paper industry, rubber industry, match industry, wooden furnitures making industries, sports goods industries, all these industries depend on the forest products. As there are many trees in the Himalayan ranges, they act as a raw material provider for many forest-based industries. Next point, it prevents the cold winds blowing from the Central Asia and protects India from severe cold. So on the other side of Himalayas, we have Central Asia, which includes China and other countries. So these Himalayas also acts as a barrier, and it prevents the cold winds blowing from Central Asia, and it protects India from severe cold. Himalayas are renowned for rich biodiversity. So what do you mean by biodiversity? Biodiversity refers to all varieties of life that can be found on the earth, like varieties of plants, animals, fungi and microorganisms. So Himalayas are renowned for the rich biodiversity. The Great Northern Plains. First we will see what is meant by plains. Plains means it is a large flat surface. And now we are going to see about the Great Northern Plains. In the map here you can see the green shaded portion in the north. So this green shaded portion is the Great Northern Plains. It lies to the south of the Himalayan ranges and to the north of the Deccan Plateau. These northern plains are formed by flooding of three major rivers. That is, these northern plains are formed by the sediments deposited by the three major rivers like Indus, Ganga and Brahmaputra, and also its tributaries like Yamuna, Gagra, Gandak, etc. These soil mostly have the alluvium deposit. So therefore, these plains are very fertile. Since it is very fertile, they support agriculture and farming, and they also support human settlement in this region. The length of the plain is about 2400 km and the width of the northern plains varies from 240 to 320 km. As you can see in this map here, the width of the northern plains increases as we move from east to west, and it covers an area of about 7 lakh square kilometer. The Great Plains of India is remarkably a homogeneous surface. That is, the surface consists of composition made of similar material and with an imperceptible slope. Imperceptible means invisible slope. And these Great Northern Plains are formed mostly by the depositional process of the Himalayan and Vindhyan rivers. That is, these northern plains are mostly formed by the sediments deposited by the rivers that originate from Himalayas and the Vindhyan ranges. The last point, these rivers deposit enormous quantity of sediments deposited along the foothills and floodplains. So as the rivers flows through the slopes and hills, they bring along with them the sediments and debris, and they settle these sediments in the foothills of the mountain and also in the plain surface. And this is how the Great Northern Plains was formed. Next we will see the important characteristic features of sediments deposition in the plains areas as follows. That is, based on the sediments that are deposited in the plains, அதனுடைய பண்புகள் அம்சங்கள் அதை பேஸ் பண்ணி அதை எப்படி டிவைட் பண்ணியிருக்காங்க, அந்த செடிமெண்ட்ஸை பேஸ் பண்ணி எப்படி டிவைட் பண்ணியிருக்காங்கன்ட்டு இப்போது நம்ம பார்க்க போகிறோம். So based on the sediment deposition in the plains, they are classified as Babar Plain, the Tarai Tract, the Bangar Plains and the Kadar Plains. First one we are going to see about the Babar Plains. This plain is made up of gravels and unassorted sediments. Okay, so in this picture you can see the Babar Plain. So adla pathina you can see the gravels. Gravels means small irregular pieces of rocks and stones. So this Babar Plain is made up of sediments of gravels, that is irregular pieces of stones and rocks, and unassorted sediments. Unassorted sediments means unordered sediments. They are not of equal size and shape. And next point, the porosity of this plain is so high that most of the river streams flow over this region disappear. The porosity of the plain, that is, the porosity means these sediments have minute holes in them through which the liquid or air passes through. So as small rivers flow through this plain, they are quickly absorbed by these sediments and they disappear. And the next point, the width of the Babar Plain varies from 8 to 15 km. It is wider in the western plains, that is in Jammu and Kashmir. So therefore in the Jammu and Kashmir, the width of these Babar Plains is high when compared to the eastern part in Assam. This plain is not suitable for cultivation since they are very porous. These sediments are very porous, it is not suitable for cultivation. Moreover, they consist of gravels, that is smaller pieces of rocks and stones. So therefore, cultivation is not suitable in this Babar Plain, and only big trees which have large roots will be grown in this region. The Tarai Tract. It is a zone of excessive dampness. That is, it is a zone which has excessive wetness. Eerapadam adhigamark. And it has thick forest and rich wildlife. This tract, that is this region, lies to the south of the Babar Plain. The width of this belt is 15 to 30 km. The Tarai is wider in the eastern part of the Great Plains, especially in the Brahmaputra Valley due to heavy rainfall. So, the width of this Tarai tract is higher in the eastern part, that is especially in the Brahmaputra Valley. In many states, the Tarai forest, which has a thick forest and rich wildlife, have been cleared for cultivation. Bangar and Kadar Plains. The Bangar Plains are formed by the deposits of old alluvial soil, and Kadar Plains are formed by the deposits of the new alluvial soil. So what is meant by this old alluvial soil and new alluvial soil? So the old alluvial soils are deposited several years ago. So these alluvial soils are deposited several years ago, so it is called as the old alluvial soil. So it is found in the Bangar Plains. And newer alluvial soil means it is flooded. So the alluvial soil in this region are flooded and deposited every year newly. So it is called as the new alluvial soil. So this new alluvial soil are found in the Kadar Plains. The Bangar land lies above the flood limit of the rivers. That is, the soil is found far from the river basin, and this soil is less fertile and therefore not suitable for agriculture. On the other side, Kadar Plains are found close to the river basin. So therefore, this soil is very fertile and it is very suitable for agriculture. Delta. Before understanding what is meant by delta, we have to know what is meant by the mouth of a river. The mouth of a river is the place where the river meets the sea or a larger waterway, and at that place it ends its journey. So on that place the river ends its journey and it mixes with the sea or a larger water body. Next, river delta is the landform which is created by deposition of sediments by the river. So as the river flow by, at the end, that is just before the mouth of the river, it deposits its sediments. Okay children, and it also splits and spreads out into several branches before entering into the sea. As you can see in this picture, the river splits into many divisions, just forming a shape like triangle. So this is the delta. So delta is the landform which is created by the deposition of the sediments by the river before it enters into the mouth of the river, and also it splits into many divisions and forms a triangle shape. All these happens just before entering into the sea, and this is the delta. The triangle shaped fertile land at the mouth of Ganga and Brahmaputra river is called Sundarbans. So in this India map you can see the red color point, isn't it? So that is the place where the river Ganga and river Brahmaputra mixes into the sea. So that is the mouth of the river Ganga and Brahmaputra, and at that place these rivers forms a delta. It is called as the Sundarban delta, and this Sundarban delta is the biggest and fastest growing delta. So this deltaic plain consists of old mud, new mud and marsh, and the uplands in this delta, that is uplands means small mountains in this delta, are called as scars, and the marshy areas, that is the wet areas in this delta, are called as bills. On the basis of deposition of sediments by various rivers and the topographical characteristics. The topographical characteristics means the physical features. So based on the physical features of that land and also the deposition of sediments by the various rivers, the northern plains of India is divided into the following four major regions. They are the Rajasthan plains, Punjab Haryana plains, Ganga plains and the Brahmaputra plains. First we will see about the Rajasthan plains. The Rajasthan plains are formed by the deposition of river Luni and the long vanished river Saraswati. So these plains are formed by the sediments deposited by the river Luni and also the river Saraswati, which was disappeared long before. And this Rajasthan plains are located in the west of the Aravalli range. So the Aravalli range you can see in your physical divisions map of India. In that, in the northwest path, you can see the Aravalli range, and to the west of this Aravalli range you have the Rajasthan plains. The total area covered by the Rajasthan plains are about 1,75,000 square kilometer, and in this region, that is in Rajasthan plains, you have several salt lakes. They are the Sambar salt lake, which is also known as the Pushkar lake, and it is located near Jaipur, and it is a very important lake in Rajasthan. Thar Desert. Thar Desert is also known as the Great Indian Desert, and it is a large arid region in the northwestern part of the Indian subcontinent. Large arid region. Arid region means the region is very dry due to the lack of water availability, and therefore it does not support the growth of plant life and animal life. The Thar Desert covers an area of 2 lakh square kilometer, and it forms as a natural boundary between India and Pakistan. The Thar Desert is considered to be the 7th largest desert in the world, and this Thar desert lies to the western part of the Aravalli range, and it covers 2/3 of the Rajasthan state. There are two major divisions of the Thar desert. They are known as the actual desert region and the semi-desert region. The actual desert region is called as the Marashtali, and the semi-desert region is called as the Bangar. Apart from that, there are different types of sand dunes and salt lakes called as duns. They are found in some parts of this Rajasthan plains. What is meant by the sand dunes? Sand dunes are nothing but the sand hills, the small hills made of sand, and these sand dunes are made by the wind. Punjab Haryana plains lies to the northeast of the Great Indian Desert. The Great Indian Desert lies to the west of the Aravalli ranges, and Punjab Haryana plains lies to the northeast part of the Great Indian Desert. It covers an area of about 1.75 lakh square kilometer, and these Punjab Haryana plains are formed by the sediments deposited by the three rivers. They are Sutlej, Beas and Ravi. So this Punjab Haryana plains are formed by the deposition of the rivers Sutlej, Beas and Ravi. This Punjab Haryana plains acts as a water divide. What is meant by water divide? Upland of this plain. Upland means an elevated feature of this plain acts as a water divide. That is, this upland divides two river systems. Okay, now let us see what are the river systems it divides. It divides two major rivers. They are Yamuna and Sutlej, and it also divides Ganga and Yamuna. Ganga Plain. The Ganga Plain extends from river Yamuna in the west to Bangladesh in the east. The total area covered by the Ganga Plain is about 3.75 lakh square kilometer. So therefore, it is said to be the Great Plain in India, and it is the largest plain of India. This Ganga Plain is formed by the sediments deposited by river Ganga and its tributaries. The tributaries of river Ganga are river Gagra, Gantak, Kosi, Yamuna, Chambal, Betwa, etc. So, river Ganga Plain is formed by the sediments deposited by river Ganga and its tributaries. Ganga Plain is divided into Upper Ganga Plain, Middle Ganga Plain and the Lower Ganga Plain. As you can see in this picture, it is divided into three parts: Upper Ganga Plain, Middle Ganga Plain and the Lower Ganga Plain. The entire plain, that is Upper, Middle and Lower Ganga Plain, the general slope of the entire plain is towards east and southeast of India. Brahmaputra Plains. The Brahmaputra Plains are located mainly in the state of Assam. As you can see in this picture, the Brahmaputra Plains is located mainly in the state of Assam, and it is a low-level plain located in the eastern part of the Great Plains of India and is formed by the sediments deposited by the river Brahmaputra. It covers an area of about 56,275 square kilometer. These plains create alluvial fans and marshy tracts. That is, these sediments which are deposited by the river Brahmaputra are mostly alluvial soil and marshy tracts. Marshy means it is mostly of wetlands. The Peninsula Plateaus. The plateau region lies to the south of the Great Northern Plains. In the map you can see clearly the green color shaded portion is the Great Northern Plains. Below this we have this Peninsular Plateau. This Peninsular Plateau covers an area of about 16 lakh square kilometer. which is about half of the total area of India. The topography consists of series of plateaus and hill ranges interspersed with river valleys. Topographic means the physical features. That is, the physical features in this peninsula plateaus are plateaus, hill ranges, which includes the river valleys. Already we have seen what is meant by valleys. Valley is a narrow gap between two mountains or hills. Now let us see the boundaries of this peninsular plateau. In the northwestern part we have the Aravalli ranges, and it acts as the northwestern boundary of this peninsula plateau. Its northern and northeastern boundaries are marked by the Bandhalkhand upland, Kaimar and Rajmahal hills. Okay children, in the northern and northeastern boundaries are Bandhalkhand upland, Kaimar and Rajmahal hills. Upland, we have seen already what is meant by upland. The elevated feature in a plain is called as the upland. Then on the east and west side we have the Western Ghats and the Eastern Ghats, and it acts as the boundaries in the west and east. And the maximum altitude of the plateaus in this region is about 600 meter. The highest peak is the Anamudi, and it is located in Anamala Hills. Its height is about 2695 meters. The general slope of this plateau is towards east. That is, these plateaus slope towards east. So therefore most of the rivers flow from west to east. The Great Plateau is a part of the Gondwana. River Narmada. River Narmada divides the Peninsula Plateau region of India broadly into two parts. In this map here you can see River Narmada here. The blue color line indicates River Narmada. The region above River Narmada, that is to the north of River Narmada, we have the Central Highlands, and the region south of River Narmada, that is below River Narmada, we have the Deccan Plateau. Okay, and all the major rivers like Mahanadi, Godavari, Krishna, Kaveri, etc., all these major rivers lying to the south of Vindhyas flow eastwards and fall into the Bay of Bengal. So, Vindhya ranges are located near the Aravalli ranges, and ranges means it is a chain of mountains. Okay, so the major rivers like Mahanadi, Godavari, Krishna, Kaveri, all these rivers which lies to the south of the Vindhyan ranges flow towards east. Already we have seen that the plateau slopes towards east, therefore these rivers flow from west to east and they end up with Bay of Bengal, that is they mix with Bay of Bengal finally. Okay, and River Narmada and Tapti alone. Okay, so River Narmada and River Tapti are the two rivers situated to the south of the Vindhya range. So these rivers which are also on the south of the Vindhya range flow towards west. So all the other rivers flow towards east, but these two rivers alone flows to west. So their movement is towards west because due to the presence of the Rift Valley in this region. Rift Valley, what is meant by Rift Valley? Rift Valley is a lowland region formed by the interaction of Earth's tectonic plates. Okay, so this is a valley which is formed due to the Earth's tectonic plates, and these rift valleys are found both on land and at the bottom of the ocean. So therefore due to the presence of this rift valley, river Narmada and Tapti alone flow towards westwards. Central Highlands. As we have already seen, River Narmada divides the Peninsula Plateau into two parts. They are Central Highlands and the Deccan Plateau. The region above River Narmada, that is to the north of River Narmada, is the Central Highlands. So therefore the Central Highlands extends from river Narmada to the Great Northern Plains. Okay, and the boundaries of the Central Highlands are on the west and northwestern edge we have the Aravalli ranges, and these hills extend from Gujarat through Rajasthan to Delhi in the northwesterly direction for a distance of about 700 km. The height of these hills is about 1500 meter in the southwest, while near Delhi the height is hardly 400 meter. That is, in the regions or state of Gujarat and Rajasthan, the height of these hills is about 1500 meter, and slowly it decreases, and in Delhi the height of, that is the maximum height of these hills is about only 400 meter. In these hills the highest peak is Guru Shikhar with an average height of 1722 meter. The western part of the Central Highland is known as the Malwa Plateau. Malwa Plateau is indicated with an arrow mark in the map above. This Malwa Plateau is located to the southeast of the Aravalli ranges and to the north of the Vindhyan ranges. The rivers like Chambal, Betwa and Ken drain the Malwa Plateau. That is, these rivers deposit their sediments in this Malwa Plateau before they join with river Yamuna. The eastward extension of this Malwa Plateau is known as the Bundelkhand, and its further extension is known as the Bagalkhand. The eastern part of the Central Highland, which lies in the northeastern part of the Indian Plateau, is known as the Chota Nagpur Plateau. That is, the eastern part of the Central Highland is marked by the Chota Nagpur Plateau, and this Chota Nagpur Plateau lies to the northeastern part of this peninsular plateau. It covers much of the Jharkhand and some parts of the Odisha, West Bengal, Bihar and Chhattisgarh. This region is very much rich in mineral resources, particularly iron ore and coal. Deccan Plateau. This physiographic division is the largest part of the plateau region of India. The shape of this plateau is roughly triangular. As you can see in this map here, the region below river Narmada marks the Deccan Plateau, and it is indicated by light yellow shade, and it is roughly triangular in shape. And now let us see the boundaries of this Deccan Plateau. On one side of this triangle is marked by the Eastern Ghats, which extends from Kanyakumari to Rajmahal Hills, and the second arm, that is on the north side, it is marked by Satpura Range, Mahadev Hills, Michael Range and Rajmahal Hills, and the third side is marked by Western Ghats. The total area of this plateau is about 7 lakh square kilometer, and the height of this plateau varies from 500 to 1000 meter above the sea level. Western Ghats. Western Ghats form the western edge of the peninsular plateau, and it runs parallel to the Arabian Sea. The northern part of this range is called as the Sahyadris, and the height of this Sahyadri mountain range increases as we move towards south. That is, the height of this Sahyadris is more in the south than in the north. Next, Anemudi. Anemudi acts as a tri-junction because three hills like Anemalai Range, Cardamom Hills and Palani Hills joins at Anemudi. And Kodaikanal is a beautiful hill resort which is situated in Palani Hills. Eastern Ghats. Eastern Ghats run from southwest to northeast and they form the eastern edge of this plateau. This range is also called as Purvadri range. The Eastern Ghats join the Western Ghats at Nilgiri Hills, bordering Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. So Nilgiri Hills is located at the border of Karnataka district and Tamil Nadu district, and it is the point where the Eastern Ghats and the Western Ghats meet. The Eastern Ghats are not continuous like the Western Ghats. So the Western Ghats are continuous range of mountains while the Eastern Ghats are discontinuous range of mountains. The rivers of Mahanadi, Godavari, Krishna, Pennar and Kaveri have dissected this range at many places. As we already seen, most of the rivers flow towards east. That is, they originate in the west and they flow towards east and they mix with the Bay of Bengal. So therefore, these Eastern Ghats are dissected by these rivers which flows towards east. So the Eastern Ghats are discontinuous range of mountains. Coastal plains. We have already studied about what is meant by coastal plains. The coastal plain is the place where the land meets the ocean or the sea. The Peninsula Plateau of India is flanked by narrow coastal plains. That is, the Peninsula Plateau of India are guarded or protected by the narrow coastal plains, which is of varied width from north to south. That is, the width of these coastal plains varies from north to south. It is not of same width. And now let us see how these coastal plains are formed. These coastal plains are formed by the depositional action of the rivers. Already we know that the plains are formed by the sediments deposited by the rivers. Along with this, the coastal plains are also formed by the depositional action of the sea waves. And the align in the deposition action வந்து நடக்குது. The Indian coastal plain are divided into two divisions. They are the Western coastal plain and the Eastern coastal plain. The Eastern coastal plain and the Western coastal plain. The Western coastal plain lies between the Western Ghats and the Arabian Sea, while the Eastern coastal plain lies between Eastern Ghats and Bay of Bengal. The Western Ghats are divided into three divisions. They are the northern part of the Western Ghats is called as the Konkan coast, and the central part is known as the Kannad, and the southern part of the Western coastal plain is called as the Malabar coast. Likewise, the Eastern coastal plain are also divided into two halves. They are the Northern Circus and the Coromandel coast. The northern part of the Eastern coastal plain is called as the Northern Circus and the southern part is called as the Coromandel coast. And the short rivers, that is like river Narmada and Tapti, do not make any deltas and they flow towards west and drain in Arabian Sea. Likewise, some of the large rivers like Godavari, Krishna, all these rivers, they flow towards east and they make a wide delta before they end up with the Bay of Bengal. Next, the east coast plain is formed by fine alluvial soil, while the west coastal plain is formed by the coarse grained soil. Okay, children. Next, we are going to see about the islands. What is meant by island? A landmass which is surrounded by water on all sides are called as the islands. India has two major islands. They are the Andaman and Nicobar Island and the Lakshadweep Island. The Andaman and Nicobar Island group consists of 572 islands and they are located in Bay of Bengal. And the Lakshadweep island has 27 islands and they are located in Arabian Sea. The islands of Nicobar, Andaman and Nicobar Island are largely tectonic and volcanic origin. That is, these Andaman and Nicobar Islands are mainly formed by the tectonic activities and the volcanic origin. India's only active volcano is found in Barren Island, which is located in Andaman and Nicobar Island. So we cannot see the volcanoes mostly in India, and the only one volcano which is present in India is found in Barren Island in Andaman and Nicobar Island. Andaman and Nicobar Island. These islands are located in an elevated portion of the submarine mountains. That is, submarine mountains means underwater mountain, which are formed due to the volcanic activity. These islands lie close to the equator, so therefore the temperature is hot and also wet throughout the year, and hence you can see dense forest in this region. The area of the island group is about 8,249 square kilometer. So the entire group of island, that is both the Andaman and Nicobar island together, are divided into two. They are Andaman in the north and Nicobar in the south. These islands are of great strategic importance for the country. And Port Blair, which is found here, is the administrative capital of Andaman and Nicobar Island. The 10-degree channel separates Andaman and Nicobar group. The southernmost tip, the Indra Point, is a part of Nicobar Island. So this Indra Point acts as the southernmost tip of India and it is located in Nicobar Island. And what separates Andaman and Nicobar Island group? It is a 10-degree channel, and which is the administrative capital of Andaman and Nicobar Island. It is the Port Blair, and this Andaman and Nicobar Island is of strategic importance of the country because during the national movement, many leaders, Indian leaders, were arrested and they were kept in this Andaman and Nicobar prison. Lakshadweep Islands. Lakshadweep Islands are a group of coral islands which is located off the west coast of India. So in the west coast of India we have this Lakshadweep Island, which is also called as a group of coral islands. Coral islands means coral means what is meant by coral? Coral means Pavalaparegal, and the coral island is derived from the skeletons of corals and numerous other plants and animals which are associated with the corals. And this island covers an area of about 32 square kilometer. The administrative capital of Lakshadweep is Kavaratti, and Lakshadweep Islands are separated by the Maldives Island by a 8-degree channel. What is this channel? Channel is a passageway. The uninhabited Pitt Island of this group has a bird sanctuary. Uninhabited means unpopulated island. It is the Pitt Island and it has a bird sanctuary. Bird sanctuary is present in this Pitt Island. Earlier, this island was divided into three. They are the Laccadive, Minicoy and Amin Devi Island. And in later 1973, they are grouped into one called as the Lakshadweep Island. Offshore island. Beside the two group of islands, so beside these two major group of islands, Lakshadweep and Andaman Nicobar Island, India has many numerous number of islands. They are located in western coast eastern coast and also in delta regions of Ganga and in Gulf of Mannar. These islands are mostly uninhabited, that is, they are not populated. Many of these islands are uninhabited and they are administered by the adjacent state. That is, these uninhabited islands are governed by the states nearby. The drainage system of India. The drainage system is also known as the river system, and it is an integrated system of tributaries and a trunk stream which collects and drains surface water into the sea, lake, or some other body of water. That is, this drainage system is a combined system of tributaries. So in this drainage system we will completely study about the river system, that is the place where it originates, what are its tributaries, and the place where it drains its sediments, and finally where it forms the delta and where it reaches the mouth of the river. That is the place where it reaches the mouth of the river and where it ends its journey. So the total area drained by a river and its tributaries is known as the drainage basin. The drainage system of India is broadly divided into two major groups based on their location. They are the Himalayan rivers and the peninsular rivers. Okay, so the Himalayan rivers includes the Indus river system, the Ganga river system, and the Brahmaputra river system. And the peninsular river system are further categorized into two. They are the east flowing rivers and the west flowing rivers. As we have already studied, the east flowing rivers are Mahanadi, Godavari, Krishna, and Kaveri, and the west flowing rivers are Narmada and Tapti. And now in this chapter we will study about the each type of river in detail. Himalayan rivers. These rivers are found in North India. Since the Himalayas are located in the north, these rivers are also found in the North India, and it originates from the Himalayas, so therefore it is called as the Himalayan rivers. These rivers are perennial rivers. What is meant by perennial? We have studied already, isn't it? So perennial rivers are rivers which have water flow throughout the year. So throughout the year there will be water flow in these rivers. And the main rivers of the Himalayas are Indus river system, the Ganges river system, and the Brahmaputra river system. And first we will study about the Indus river system. The Indus river system is one of the largest rivers of the world. In this map here you can clearly see the place where it originates. The Indus river originates from the northern slope of the Kailash range at an elevation of about 5150 meter, and this Kailash range is located in Tibet, which is near Manasarovar lake. And the length of this river, that is totally it flows through a distance of 2880 kilometer, and in this total distance in India it travels about 709 kilometer. Can you understand, children? So this Indus river originates in Tibet and it enters India, and then it moves towards Pakistan. So the total distance traveled by this river is 2880 kilometer, and in India it travels about 709 kilometer. The river has a total drainage area extending 11,65,500 square kilometer. So totally the river deposits and its sediments in an area of about 11,65,500 square kilometer, and in this also about 3,21,289 square kilometer areas are drained in India. The river flows through the Ladakh and Zaskar ranges and creates a deep gorges. What is meant by gorges here? We have already studied about gorges also. So the gorge means it is a narrow valley between two mountains or hills. And the river runs through Jammu and Kashmir and it turns towards south near Chillar and it enters into Pakistan. Its major tributaries are Jhelum, Chenab, Ravi, Beas and Sutlej. In this map you can see clearly the tributaries of river Indus. It has 5 tributaries. They are Jhelum, Chenab, Ravi, Beas and Sutlej. In this Jhelum and Chenab are the largest tributary of river Indus. Okay. Finally, after flowing in Pakistan, finally it ends its journey at Arabian Sea. The Ganga River System. The Ganga River System is the largest drainage system of India. That is, it is the largest river system of India and it extends over an area of 8,61,404 square kilometer. The Ganges Plain is the most densely populated place in India and many towns are developed on the banks of this river. So, this Ganges Plain is very fertile and it is suitable for agriculture and also for settlement, and also due to the availability of water facility, this region is densely populated. The river Ganga originates at Bhagirathi from the Gangotri glacier in Uttarkasi district of Uttarakhand state at an elevation of 7010 meter. The length of the river Ganga is about 2525 kilometer. So it travels through a distance of about 2525 kilometer. Its major tributaries from the north are Gomati, Gantak, Koshi and Gagra, and from the south its tributaries are Yamuna, Sun and river Chambal, and also there are many other small rivers. In this river Yamuna is said to be the largest tributary of river Ganga. The river Ganga is known as the river Padma in Bangladesh. The combined river of Ganga and Brahmaputra creates the world's largest delta known as the Sundarbans in Bangladesh before it joins the Bay of Bengal. So already we have seen that the river Ganga and also river Brahmaputra creates the world's largest delta in Bangladesh, which is known as the Sundarbans Delta. The Brahmaputra river system. The Brahmaputra river originates from the Chemyangdanga glacier of Kailash. So like the Indus river, this river also originates from the Kailash range to the east of the Lake Manasarovar in Tibet at an elevation of about 5150 meter. The total area drained by this river is about 5,80,000 square kilometer, and the total area drained by this Brahmaputra river in India is about 1,94,413 square kilometer. This river is also known as Tangspo in Tibet. So the meaning of Tangspo is purifier. So this river is called as Tangspo in Tibet. The length of this river is about 2,900 kilometer. So the total distance traveled by this river is about 2,900 kilometer. That is the distance from where it originates to the place where it ends its journey. The total distance traveled by this river is 2,900 kilometer, and in this the distance traveled by this river is in India is 900 kilometer, and then it enters into India through a gorge in Arunachal Pradesh, namely Dihang. Okay children, gorge means it is a narrow valley between two mountains. And this river Brahmaputra, it enters into India through a narrow gorge in Arunachal Pradesh. It is called as Dihang, and it has many tributaries like river Tista, river Manas, Barak, Subansiri, Subansiri, and are some of the major tributaries of river Brahmaputra. This river is called as Jamuna in Bangladesh, and after it joins with the river Ganga in Bangladesh, the river is called as Meghna. So see how many names for this river Brahmaputra in various countries. So in Tibet, this river is called as Tangspo, and in Bangladesh, it is called as Jamuna, and the after mixing with Ganga in Bangladesh, it is called as river Meghna. Okay. And the tributaries of river Brahmaputra is Tista, Manas, Barak, Subansiri are some of the tributaries of river Brahmaputra. So while studying about the river system, you have to know the place where it originates and how many, what is the area it has drained, and what is the distance it flows, and also what are its tributaries and what are its other names. So all these are very important. Now we will see the characteristics of the Himalayan rivers. We have studied about the three major rivers in the north, that is the river Indus, river Ganga and river Brahmaputra. And now we will see the characteristics of these Himalayan rivers. These rivers are long and wide. These rivers flow through a long distance, so therefore they are said to be long and wide. And second point, they are perennial in nature. Since they have water flow throughout the year, they are perennial in nature. And third point, they are unsuitable for hydropower generation. So what is the reason for this? These rivers, Himalayan rivers, they carry silt along with them as they flow. Silt is fine sand, clay and broken pieces of rocks, and these silt has to be filtered before they enter into the turbines, otherwise it will cause damage to the machines of the hydroelectric power plant. So therefore it is unsuitable for hydropower generation. And the fourth point is middle and lower courses are navigable. So what is the upper course, middle course and the lower course? Upper course is the mountainous region where the river flows, and after flowing through the mountains and slopes, it reaches the plain surface, that is the middle course, and finally it reaches the deltaic region where it deposits its sediments, and this is called as the lower course. So in the upper course, where which is a mountain, there the navigation is not possible. So therefore the middle course and the lower course are suitable for navigation. So these are the characteristics of the Himalayan rivers. Peninsular rivers. The rivers in the South India are called as the peninsular rivers. Most of these rivers originate in the Western Ghats. They are seasonal rivers, that is they are non-perennial rivers. That is only during the rainfall season you can find the water flow, and during the summer and dry season the river will also be dry without water. They have a large seasonal fluctuation in volume of water as they are solely fed by rain. So these rivers mainly depend on rain, so therefore there will be a fluctuation in the volume. During rainy season the level of the water will be high, and as the summer starts, the water level will start to reduce. These rivers flow in valleys with steep gradients. That is, these rivers flow in valleys with which has a steep path. Based on the direction of flow, the peninsular rivers are divided into two. They are the west flowing rivers and the east flowing rivers. East flowing rivers. The east flowing rivers are River Mahanadi, River Godavari, River Krishna and River Kaveri. First we will study about River Mahanadi. So while studying about rivers, you should first know about the place where it originates, and second the length of the river, and the third one is the tributaries of the river, and also the distributaries of these rivers, and finally you have to know where it forms the delta and where it reaches the mouth of the river. Okay children, first we will study about River Mahanadi. The River Mahanadi originates near Shihava in Rajput district of Chhattisgarh and flow through Odisha. So in this map here you can see River Mahanadi, which is marked by the arrow. This River Mahanadi originates near Shihava in the district of Chhattisgarh, and the length of this river is about 851 km. The tributaries of River Mahanadi are Sionath, Telen, Chandur and Elvi. And the main streams of Mahanadi gets divided into several distributaries. That is, the main river Mahanadi, while reaching its delta, that is before the mouth of the river, before reaching the mouth of the river, it splits itself into many divisions, and they are called as the distributaries. So the distributaries of River Mahanadi are Paika, Birupa, Chittartala, Genkati and Nan. All these distributaries form the delta of Mahanadi, which is one of the largest delta in India. The Mahanadi empties its water in Bay of Bengal. That is, finally River Mahanadi empties itself in Bay of Bengal. That is, it ends its journey in Bay of Bengal. River Godavari. Godavari is the longest river among the peninsular rivers. So among the peninsular rivers, River Godavari is the longest river, and its total length is about 1465 km, and it drains about an area of 3.13 lakh square kilometer. It is also called as Vriddha Ganga. River Godavari originates in Nasik district of Maharashtra, which is a portion of the Western Ghats, and it flows through the states of Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, and finally it ends at Bay of Bengal. Some of its major tributaries are Purna, Penganga, Pranita, Indravati, Tal and Salami. So all these are some of the major tributaries of River Godavari. The river near Rajmundri gets divided into two channels called Vasishta and Gautami. Okay, so in a place called Rajamundri, this river Godavari divides itself into two channels. They are Vasishta and Gautami, and it forms one of the largest deltas in India. Kollaru, a freshwater lake, is located in the deltaic region of the Godavari. Kollaru, a freshwater lake called Kollaru, is located in the deltaic region of River Godavari. So in the map below you can see the complete flow of River Godavari. River Krishna. The River Krishna originates from a spring. What is a spring? So spring is a place where the underground water emerges into the land through a opening. Okay, so River Krishna originates from a spring at a place called Mahabaleshwarar in the Western Ghats of Maharashtra. The total length of this river is about 1400 km, and it drains an area of about 2.58 lakh square kilometer, and it is the second longest peninsular river. The first longest peninsular river is River Godavari, and the second longest peninsular river is River Krishna. The major tributaries of River Krishna are River Bhima, Peddavagu, River Musi, River Koina, and River Tungabhadra. So these are the major tributaries of River Krishna. It also flows through Andhra Pradesh and it joins in Bay of Bengal at a place called Hamasala Devi. River Kaveri. River Kaveri originates at a place called Talakaveri, which is in Kudagu Hills of the Karnataka state. River Kaveri flows through a distance of about 800 km. It originates in Karnataka and flows to Tamil Nadu, and finally it ends at Bay of Bengal. In the state of Karnataka, it divides itself into two, forming the sacred islands. So it divides itself into two, and thus it forms two sacred islands. They are Srirangapatnam and Sivasamudram. Okay, and River Kaveri is called as Dakshin Ganga or Ganga of the South. While entering into Tamil Nadu, River Kaveri flows through many twisted wild gorges before it reaches River Hokanekal waterfalls, which is in Dharmapuri, and again it passes through straight narrow gorge near Salem. Already we have studied about what is meant by gorge. The valley, narrow valley between two mountains is called as the gorge. And River Kaveri, when it reaches Tiruchirappalli, it splits into two. The upper part of the River Kaveri is called as River Kollarun, and the southern part remains as River Kaveri. It splits into two, and it travels as such for about 16 km, and again it joins, and thus it forms the Srirangam island. And at last River Kaveri splits, that is it reaches the Bay of Bengal. It ends at its journey at Bay of Bengal in a place called Pumbuhar. West flowing rivers. The main west flowing rivers are River Narmada and River Tapti. First we will see about River Narmada. River Narmada originates in Amarkantak Plateau in Madhya Pradesh at an elevation of about 1057 meter, and it flows through a distance of about 1312 kilometer, and it drains an area of about 98,796 square kilometer. Then before entering into Arabian Sea, this river Narmada, it forms an estuary which is of about 27 kilometer long. Okay, what is meant by estuary? It is an area where the salt water of the sea mixes with the fresh water of the river. So this river Narmada, before entering into Arabian Sea, it forms an estuary of about 27 kilometer long, and it enters into Arabian Sea through the Gulf of Cambay. River Narmada is said to be the largest west flowing rivers of the peninsular India. Okay, so among the peninsular rivers, it is said to be the largest west flowing rivers. Some of the major tributaries of river Narmada are Bahnar, Halon, Heron, Banjar, Dudhi, Shakar, Tawa, Barna and Kolar. Tapti. The river Tapti is one of the major rivers of the peninsular India, and it is one of the three rivers which flows from east to west. The other two rivers which flows from east to west are River Narmada and River Mahi. River Tapti flows through the distance of about 724 km, and it covers an area of about 65,145 square km. River Tapti rises near Multai Tank in the Beetal districts of Madhya Pradesh at an elevation of about 752 meter. And the major tributaries of river Tapti is river Vaki, river Gomai, Arunavati, Anar, Nesu, Burav, Panchhara and Bori. So these are the major tributaries of river Tapti. And finally it ends at Arabian Sea through the Gulf of Cambay. Now let us see the characteristics of the South Indian rivers. The South Indian rivers mainly originates from the Western Ghats, and these rivers are short and narrow. These rivers are non-perennial in nature. That is, these are seasonal rivers, and you can see the flow of water only during the rainy season, and during summer or dry season the river will be dry without water. And fourth point, it is suitable for hydropower generation. You can see many hydropower plants across these rivers, and these rivers are not suitable for navigation as they are non-perennial rivers. So we have completed the lesson, and now we will have a short recap of this lesson. In this lesson we studied about the physical divisions of India. There are 5 major physical divisions in India. They are the northern mountains, northern Great Plains, the plateau region, the coastal plains and the islands. First we studied about the northern mountains. The northern mountains are classified into 3 divisions. They are the Trans-Himalayas, Himalayas and the Eastern Himalayas. Further, the Himalayas are classified into 3. They are the Greater Himalayas, the Lesser Himalayas and the Outer Himalayas. Next we studied about the Northern Great Plains. These Northern Great Plains are divided into 4. They are the Rajasthan Plains, Punjab Haryana Plains, Gangetic Plains and the Brahmaputra Plains. And thirdly we studied about the plateau region. These plateau region are divided into 2. They are the Central Highlands and the Deccan Plateau. So the region to the north of river Narmada is the Central Highlands, and the region below that is to the south of river Narmada is the Deccan Plateau. And then we studied about the islands. The 2 major islands are Andaman and Nicobar Island and Lakshadweep Island. And we studied about the drainage system of India, that is the river system of India. The river system of India are mainly classified into 2. They are the North Indian rivers, that is the Himalayan rivers, and the South Indian rivers, called as the peninsular rivers. The North Indian rivers or the Himalayan rivers are river Indus, river Ganga and river Brahmaputra. And the peninsular rivers are further classified into east flowing rivers and the west flowing rivers. The east flowing rivers are river Mahanadi, Godavari, Krishna and Kaveri, and the west flowing rivers are river Narmada, Tapti, Mahi and Sabarmati. Okay. Go through the lesson, children. Underline the important points while you are reading so that it will be easy for you to recall. Happy learning, children. Thank you.